So this session is all about growth. How many here want to grow your business? Anybody who doesn't? So we're all about growth. And the point of this session is to really give you actionable activities that you can do when you leave here today. I know it's great to be motivated and inspired, and I hope we do all of that today, but I'm going to also give you homework. By the time you leave this session, you're going to have action items that you can take and do within the next 24 hours, 48 hours, next week or week, that will actually help you grow your business. Good with you? Like the idea of doing something useful. All right, let me give you a little bit of background on how we got to these 5 key topics. This year, 2015, USA Today turned to me and said, Small Business Week, May of 2015, we'd like to do a special series, and we'd like to turn over Small Business Week to you, Rhonda. You've got a week to do whatever you'd like to do in USA Today in print and online. Good deal, right? So I sat down with my team and I said, let's really make it useful. We have 5 days. What are the 5 things that we think are the most important things for a small business to do if they are going to want to grow? And we spent a little bit of time on this. We had a few sessions on this. We planned, we've looked at it, and we said, what are those key things? We looked at various different issues, and these were the 5 that we distilled as being the most important. They're not necessarily in order, but I think the first one in some ways is the most important in some way as we're looking at this. And I think it's going to surprise you. But for a small business, or even a startup that wants to grow big, I think the key to success is to find a niche, to narrow what you do. Now, it seems a little counterintuitive because everybody wants all the customers that they can get. But in reality, if you try to be all things to all people, you're nothing to everybody. You're unable to master your resources, marshal your resources, so that you're able to put them into a specific field, a specific target market, and make them work for you. So let me share a couple of stories with you about this, and one of them is pretty close to home. I have a niece in New York who is I talk about my family a lot, so you'll get used to it. I have a niece in New York who's in public relations, and she is in a particular niche in public relations. She was the director of PR for the American Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgeons. All those cosmetic plastic surgeons who do facelifts, injectables, all that stuff. How many of you have never heard of any of this stuff? Right? It's something we all think about. But she had a niche, and early this year, she was approached by a brand new PR firm that was only going to specialize in this kind of client base. And they started in September of 2014, and by May, they had more clients that they could handle. They had already something like 10 employees, 12 clients, few $1 million in revenue already in less than a few months, because suddenly they had a very clear niche. Cosmetic medical. Seems like a crazy niche, but that's what it is. Cosmetic, and literally they are turning people away. Virtually at the same time, I had a friend, Jennifer, who also in New York started a PR firm, and if you go to their website, they do PR for everybody. And Jennifer and her partner are still struggling. Even though she had tons of contacts, they both had probably as many contacts as the firm that Dina joined. But the reality is it's hard to be distinct when you're trying to compete against everyone. And can this work in every kind of field? Well, how many of you here are accountants? So, tell you a story I'm sure that many of you can relate to. I don't remember which year it was. Which year did Enron die? How many remember Enron? Enron was a big debacle, and when it went down, what most people don't also understand is it took down their accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, went with them. Remember Arthur Andersen? And when Arthur Andersen died, soon thereafter, I was speaking in Chicago to the Small Business Development Center counselors throughout the greater Chicagoland area. They had brought me in. And one of the problems that they were having, these are the consultants who work with people who are starting businesses. And they said, we are overflowing with people who were accountants who now need to start their own business because they used to be employed by Arthur Andersen. And what do we do about that? And I said, well, I tell them to all get a niche. You know, be an accountant who specializes in veterinary offices, for instance. Do something where you're really clear, because then it's a clear niche of how you reach your market. We're going to talk about this in specific. And you're differentiated from the 2,000 or 5,000 other small accountants in Chicago, and you can have a nationwide client client base from Chicago. Well, I talked about this as a theoretical, but it was less than about 6 months later. I was in Jackson, Mississippi speaking. I was sitting at my lunch table, and there was a woman, and I asked her what she did, and she said, I do marketing for an accounting firm here in Jackson, Mississippi. And I said, what kind of accounting firm? She said, we specialize in optometry offices. And I said, well, how many optometrists are there in Jackson? She said, oh, only a handful, but we have a nationwide audience, nationwide clientele. I said, how did you get into it? One of our partners played tennis with an optometrist. It wasn't that they did a business plan and identified this. I said, is there anything specifically different for an optometrist office other than any other kind of client? She said, they have a little retail. So they have a little retail operation because they do eyeglasses in many of these offices. But otherwise, you can learn it in a week or two, the specialty. But they were able to build a nationwide practice from Jackson, Mississippi. And I said, let me tell you how you market. You go to national optometry conventions, don't you? She said, absolutely. And we're the only CPA on the trade show floor, right? We volunteer and write an accounting column, a financial column for the Optometry magazine. And we're the only CPA that's doing that. Specializing in a niche enables you to immediately find a target market. And as you're talking about what kind of niches you can go into, I really want to talk about some of these. If you are in a B2B business like the accountant was, industry is always the easiest one to choose, because there is a built-in target market for you to reach and a built-in way to reach your marketing. There is an association for just about every single business in the world, and certainly in this country. 10 years ago, there were 37,000 associations, trade associations. And my other niece, Erin, was just telling me that she's about to get certified as a sleep trainer. There's a Sleep Trainers Association. All of these associations have websites, they have memberships, they have conventions, they have blogging opportunities. So by specializing in certain industries, there's a way for you to reach them immediately. And you differentiate yourself. People think you have special knowledge. And you know what? After the first, second, or third client you have like that, you will have special knowledge. You will develop your special knowledge. So looking at what kind of niche you can go, especially in industry, is, have you worked in that industry before? Do you have contacts in that? Do you have an affinity for it? Are there not a lot of other people who are doing your kind of business who are already marketing to them? So think outside the box a little bit about it, and think about that. Demographics is another easy way to go after it. You can be going after a certain age group or a certain kind of lifestyle. You could be going after snowboarders. You could be going after young mothers. You could targeting those kinds of groups. And when I was in Pittsburgh, I was speaking to the Salon Association, and one hair salon specialized in Orthodox Jewish women. Who knew? But Orthodox Jewish women wear wigs, and it was a specialty. And the woman who had the salon was not Jewish, and her hairdressers were not Jewish. But she was able to start figuring out how to market to them. Geographic is obvious. If you're a realtor, that's a good way to do it, or other kind of convenience. A unique knowledge or differentiated kind of style. So unique knowledge, our business, and let me just say, and this just happened because I was just at a trade show. My company, we publish books on entrepreneurship and small business and business plan. I just went to an academic conference with deans of business schools, and there were, as often happens, there are 5 publishers in the room. There's Cengage and Pearson and McGraw-Hill and Wiley. You've heard of all of those, right? They're all billion-dollar companies, and then there's me. But we've been able to carve out a niche. We have over 1,000 business schools because we specialize in one thing. And even the Cengage representative says, we don't do what you do. So having that differentiated niche enables you to compete. Now I'm going to tell you something, what's holding you back? What's holding you back from doing this is fear. What you're afraid of is that you're going to be turning people away when you are looking for business, and you're not making enough money now, right? Every dollar is good. So it feels like fearful to say, I'm going to specialize in this. So I'm going to give you a trick. I'm going to tell you a secret. You can have more than one business card. They're $10. Vistaprint, right? $10, get yourself a second business card. You can have different pages on your website, and you can, or even 2 websites. So you don't have to be afraid to take all of that away. If you still want to have a business card in a place like this, where you feel like you want to reach everybody, or you're just starting out, that's one thing. But feel free to set up the second business card that says, Marketing Specialist for Veterinarians, because it costs you $10. But that way you're differentiated when you're dealing with it. Don't be afraid to do that. But as you become more comfortable, you're going to find out that having that niche is so empowering. I cannot begin to tell you how empowering it is, because suddenly you become the expert. You become the expert that people turn to. You get speaking opportunities at their trade shows. You get opportunities to socialize with them, with that industry or that demographic group, because you're now the leading fill in the blank for the such and such industry or such and such group. I'm going to give you some specific things to do a little later. All right, so that was number 1. Tuesday of Small Business Week on what's the next kind of important thing to do. And I want you to remember this. You cannot reach a goal you haven't set. You can't reach a goal you haven't set. So planning is critical. Now, I am not talking about writing a 35-page business plan. You know, many people have done that. That is not what I'm here to talk about. I'm talking about coming up with a vision and then figuring out how you're going to execute on it. What kind of resources is it? What kind of specific goals you're going to give yourself? And also, and here's one of the most important things, you're going to evaluate yourself and your resources and your business, and you're going to find out what works and what doesn't. And if you're just starting out, how many of you are brand new businesses within the last year? Relatively small. But whether you're just starting out or whether you're an existing business, planning is critical. In my company, we do an annual business plan day or 2. Depends on how much time we have. I take the whole staff out of the office. This year I hired a facilitator. I'm a planning expert, and I brought in a facilitator who I've been working with actually all year. And we take a look at the whole company. We do preparation beforehand. We look at what's been profitable, what hasn't. I'm not a big company. It's a small company, but it forces us to look at what are our goals for the year and what are all of those good ideas that we want to set aside. All right, I'm going to ask you to be honest with me. I know this is going to be a scary thing. How many of you are entrepreneurs? Raise your hand, or own a small business. Keep your hands up. How many of you have not had a good idea for your business in the last 2 weeks? You haven't had a good idea in the last? Everybody, you've all had a good idea for your business in the last 2 weeks, right? The problem with entrepreneurs is not that they have, did I phrase it wrongly? How many of you have had a good idea for your business in the last 2 weeks? Let's do it that way. All right, from now on, I'm phrasing it that way. How many of you had a good idea in the last week? In the last hour, right? Entrepreneurs, how many of you had ideas for 6 businesses on your drive down here? I mean, we have a joke in my office of which business of the week I've created, you know? So it can be paralyzing to have all those good ideas in your life. So I'm going to give you another little trick. One of the things that I do, we don't do it as much now, but we did it for many years. Go get a red notebook. It can be a red 3-ring binder. It can be a red notebook. You can use the notebook that they gave you in today's handout in your bag. You can call it. And that's going to be your good idea notebook. And every time you have a good idea for your business, you're going to write it down. And every 6 months in a planning session, you're going to go back and look at those ideas. I am going to give you permission here and now. This is going to be so empowering. You're going to say, that was the best thing I got all day. I am going to give you permission not to act on all your good ideas. Feels good, doesn't it? Phew, I don't have to put that marketing piece together. The reality is planning is figuring out what are the best things for you to be doing, the most effective things for you to be doing, the best things in terms of ROI, and focusing on those. The most important thing you can do in planning is deciding what not to do. Not what to do, but what not to do. Because you can waste so much time on things that aren't important. So as we, for instance, I'll give you a couple of things. In this year's planning session, our goal, I come up with this stuff, was RAP, R-A-P. We were going to focus on revenue that was recurring, right? Our priority when we were making decisions are what revenue is recurring that will happen year after year, our automatic, which is what we think we don't have to create new stuff all the time, but we can use from our existing products or services that we have, and that are profitable. So we looked, and those were the activities we decided to put our energy into the most and start cutting those other things that aren't as profitable, aren't as recurring, lower on our activity list. Just that process helps you figure out how to be more successful. And I have to tell you that our annual planning session has twice in my short business life, has helped my business survive, has kept me from failing. Because early on, in one of our annual sessions, we looked at it and we said, where's our revenue coming from? And 90% of our revenue was coming from the bookstore trade. What they call in book sales trade, the trade business. And it was all being done by one distributor. We have an exclusive distributor. So 90% of our sales came from one distributor. And I said, if I were my client, I would tell me to diversify. And I said, where's the other 10% coming from? And we looked, and there were colleges and universities who were buying our books without us marketing to them. So we made a decision to start marketing to them. How good was that decision? A few years later, my distributor went bankrupt. And in a bankruptcy, your cash is held up. We had, by that time, half of our income coming from our second stream by then, by looking at that. And that's one of the things that planning does, is you look at where you're vulnerable. How many of you have heard of a SWOT analysis? SWOT analysis? If you go on my website, planningshop.com, under Solution Center, there's a free SWOT analysis. But SWOT stands for strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. And if that's all you basically do, if you sit down on a plan and say, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What's my opportunities? What's my threat? That's a beginning step for planning. But where I like you to go with planning is to also start taking quantifiable, specific goals. Okay, so you're gonna choose a niche. You're gonna plan. These aren't your homework yet. Homework's coming later, so pay attention. You can choose a niche. You're gonna plan, but how are you gonna execute on this? The third most important thing, if it moves, is, all right, you're gonna market. Because you can't do all that wonderful stuff if nobody knows about you. And here is the absolute truth. If you build a better mousetrap and you don't market, nobody's beating a path to your door. You have to let the world know you exist. And I must tell you, most of us who start small businesses do it because we love the product, we love the service, or we fell into it. It's something we're good at and we enjoy doing, or it was something we did before and we couldn't get another job in that field. Almost none of us are very good at marketing our business. I would say this is probably one of the 2 or 3 single biggest problems for small businesses, is they're so busy working on their business that they don't have time to market it. And I fail at this too. Most of us do, because it's hard for us to spend that time. So here are a couple of things that I really want you to understand. Marketing is a weekly part of your business. It's not something you do from time to time. It's got to be something that you're thinking about, and your market has to be clear. The most important part of your marketing, is choosing the right target market. I don't know how many of you heard Jewel Burks talk about it before, about social media. She was talking about which social media should you use, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. And the important thing is you have to choose the social media that works to your market. That goes back to you understanding your target market and choosing that. So step one in effective marketing is understanding who you're marketing to, because that helps you identify where those people are, what social media they're doing it, what associations they are, what AdWords they're probably using, all of those kinds of things. That's the first part of marketing. And then you have to have a message, and it's got to be clear. And it has to have a call to action, and that has to be clear. I collect, and I'm not kidding you, marketing materials that are sent to me that will tell me about a sale, it's happening in a business, and they don't put the address of the business on there, right? We've all gotten them, right? One of my favorite things once, I don't even know if Kmart still exists, but when I was first moving into an apartment, I needed a little patio furniture. I got Sunday paper, you had the inserts. I hope you still get papers. I don't know if people get papers. I don't get. But there was a Kmart ad, and I saw a little outdoor set, and I wanted to find out more about it. There was no phone number. There was no way to actually reach them on a Sunday. They're paying all this money for Sunday, and they didn't have a Sunday phone number that was even answered. So make sure your message is clear and that there's a call to action. What is it that you want people to do? And that's really much more challenging than you think. When we market, most of us when small businesses market, we think it's enough to just get branding out there. Well, most of us don't have enough money to just build brand. We actually have to be working on selling something, bringing people in and asking people to do for us. And then there's the method. Are you going to use AdWords? Are you going to do direct mail? What works for you? And I do want to say one thing is along social media, we're going to talk about social media a bit, is very hot right now. But traditional things still work when you're marketing. I'm a big fan of AdWords for certain kinds of products. You know, those search engine marketing, which if this was 10 years ago, everybody would want to know about search engine marketing because that was hot then. But the reality is that social media takes up a lot of time and a lot of energy for small businesses, where an AdWord you often get somebody when they're about to buy and they're at that moment. All right, so you're going to have a niche, you're going to plan, you're then going to market the heck out of your business. I got to get a little closer here. And these are some of the major ways you're going to market. As I mentioned, you're going to use social media. And the key to social media is choosing where your customers are. So in my business, by the way, you know, I didn't even put it up there. My biggest social media group by far is a closed LinkedIn group that I have. I'm doing business-to-business sales. My major buyers nowadays are college professors. And they're not going to be on Facebook, but they are going to be in LinkedIn. And I started a group on LinkedIn. I have the Entrepreneurship Educators group on LinkedIn. We have thousands of members. It's a closed group. You have to be approved. And now I have a leads group of a few thousand people who are interested in me and our books, and we're interacting with them all the time. So the key to social media is choosing where you really need to be. And where you need to be, where there are people who could possibly be buying. And that is the other thing to think about in social media. And Jules just said this, and I really want to pick up on it. Think of it as creating leads for you. You want to create engagement with people, but how can you also turn those engaged people into people who could potentially be customers? How do you also drive them? So part of it is engagement, and then also being sure to let them know how you can then develop them, how you can reach out to people to see about their needs. We talked about AdWords. I want to also talk about doing email newsletters. How many of you get at least 10 email newsletters, right? They're sort of a nuisance, right? Because you just don't have. How many would you say that you look at a newsletter maybe 1 out of every 5 times at most? Maybe 1 out of every 5 times? That's a 20% response rate. You know, in direct mail, a 2% response rate is huge. Newsletters are a great way to keep your name in front of customers even when they don't open the newsletter. But if you can provide value to them, where they're learning something, they're getting things that help their life, they will gladly open that newsletter. when it's not about sales, when it's about things that relate to what you're selling that help them, then they're going to be responsive. And so we still do use newsletters, and I really recommend for small businesses to keep doing that. Networking, though, networking is critical. Thank you all for being here, because I don't know about you, but I just met somebody at lunch that I may use their service, and they live in Raleigh, North Carolina. Are they here? I don't know if they are. But it was basically, I just networked with somebody who I met face-to-face, who if I had seen on the web, I would never have hired, because they're in Raleigh, North Carolina. Nothing beats face-to-face marketing. And I read a study recently that of content marketers, and these are people who are in the business of selling content online, when they surveyed people as to what the most effective marketing was, they discovered it was face-to-face marketing. So still join those chambers, or those mixers, or those association events. Go to the dinners where you can be sponsoring a table at the optometry convention. Getting out there face-to-face, and boy, oh boy, I know it's really hard at the end of a long day to drag yourself to a 6:30 mixer or an 8 a.m. the next morning or 7 a.m. But those are the kinds that help build your business in the long term. And if you have the kind of business that it's not a small business in a local town, going to industry conferences and coming to things like this. There are many people, I've talked to a half a dozen people here who flew in here to this conference from all over the US, because it's a chance for them not only to learn, but to network. And then there's traditional ads, and don't forget your collateral. We're going to go back to that business card. The most important piece of marketing material you have is your business card. So make sure it says on there what you do. And on all 3 of your different business cards, it can say what you do. But carry those with you at all times. I'm always shocked at how many people don't carry their business cards with them. But even when you're sitting at your kid's soccer game, you should have a business card on there, and it should say what you do. Okay, so we're going to do the niche, we're going to plan, we're going to market, but you're not going to do it alone. So the next part of growth is to build a team. Now, when I talk about a team, remember Rhonda's rules. You cannot grow alone. How many of you are solopreneurs? One person. I'm still going to talk to you. This is not just about hiring employees. It's about building a team to help you grow. I was a solopreneur for over a decade, but I still had a team. And that team helped advise me. I had a business buddy, Jennifer Arthur, in San Francisco, and Jennifer and I were our business buddies. When we had an issue, a problem client, we were working on a proposal, we had more work than we could handle, and we could subcontract to each other. We met at least once a week, and we were friends, so it was usually lunch or dinner, but we would talk over our business issues, and we would get feedback. And we would send each other our proposals, and it was sort of like an open the kimono. We would show what we were charging, and we would talk about this. And even if that's the first person in your team, if they're a friend, but somebody you can talk to openly, I'm going to say, get yourself a team. Let me tell you who's probably the worst member of your team: your spouse. Now, y'all love your spouses, and they're supportive, and they're great people, and they want you to succeed, but they also bring their own issues to it when you talk to them about it. I see people head nodding all over this room. So your spouse is usually too close to you, doesn't want you to get hurt, doesn't want you to be vulnerable, doesn't want you to take too many risks, whatever it is, and they have their own fears about money that are tied into yours. So trying to build a team, and your spouse can give you advice. I'm not saying never talk to your spouse, but you need a team beyond your spouse. So other kinds of people who can be great members of your team, and I'm not just saying this because they're all in the room, is your accountant. My CPA is my #1 team member. I mean, not only has he saved me hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years, but we have a meeting at least once a year in which we talk about what I'm doing. And, it's all about financial advice and kind of stuff, but he really got good judgment, and I sit down with him. So I think one of the things you should be thinking about is having a team. And it's a lot cheaper than hiring employees to pay for a couple of hours of your accountant or a lawyer, or a marketing consultant. These people don't have to be on your payroll. to be part of your team, that you can have that sense that you're not alone. So have lunch with your attorney once a year, or have a meeting with them. Feel like you can build these teams. Talk to a consultant. Build a team of people that you can turn to so you're not alone in this. Now, on the other hand, you may want to grow by hiring employees, because that really is when you change how you view your business. And here's a question I want you to ask yourself if you're thinking about whether or not to hire. Are you growing a job, or are you growing a business? Are you growing a job, or are you growing a business? Now, let me tell you, there is nothing wrong with growing a job. It's much more, I truly believe growing your own job is much more secure than working for someone else. I've done it for most of my life. You're in control of your life every morning instead of having somebody, you know, a continent away make decisions about you. So I give you permission to be growing a job, and I'm not going to even use the word just growing a job, because it's empowering. You're supporting your family. But if you want to grow a business, and by a business I mean something that has wealth beyond just the time that you put into it, that you're leveraging other people's work, or you're creating a product that sells while you're sleeping, or something that can have wealth to it, something you might be able to sell one day, then you have to have employees or a team of contractors, something that you're growing, building that vision. And so even for some of those of you who are solopreneurs, I want you to ask yourself that question. And if you so are thinking about it, think about how you can start. And you can start small. My first employee was a 10-hour-a-week, $10 an hour administrative assistant who I hired as a contractor who worked at my dining room table, right? That was my first employee. I didn't make a huge commitment. I didn't, you know, make a $50,000 a year job and do all of that. It was a foot in the water instead of jumping into it. So you can start small. And one of the things to think about is, what are those jobs that you're doing now that are keeping you from growth? That you're not using your best skill set because you have to spend time running to the post office to mail something, or FedEx, or whatever you're doing. Are those the kinds of things that you could have being done for you? And usually when we think about hiring, we think about hiring a salesperson or somebody else to do our work. But think about the administrative things first that you might be able to send off to someone else. And I think the key to growth with a team, and this is really hard, is to make that mental leap. And I know that because I did it. It held me. If I had one decision I could make in my business, I have a whole lot that I would change, but one of the many is that I would have hired sooner. I would have hired 5 years sooner. Because even though I was making a lot of money on my own, I was wasting the opportunity to grow my business into something larger, and to have recurring revenue, and have something that makes money while I sleep. And that's part of it. So part of it is making that mental leap. Okay. Finally, I think the fifth key to growth in this situation, and for growth, the key issue is you got to be mobile. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no other option. And I don't mean just that you're on your phone all the time. How many of you have done some business activity on your phone today while you're here? Everybody. Well, keep in mind your customers are too. Your clients and your customers are doing business on their phones, just as virtually everybody just raised their hands. So you have to go mobile or go home. And so keep in mind, and I looked at these numbers are only 6 months old, but now it's 94% of Americans own cell phones. And more than a third of them, that is their primary internet access. So as you're building ways for people to interact with you, keep in mind the the only way that a third of your potential customers are going to interact with you is on their phone, and that a majority of them are going to be interacting with you on their phone in some way or another. And we don't think about that because we think we're mobile, but we don't think that what we're doing is really related to it. And when talking about going mobile, it's not merely a matter of marketing your business. It's also a matter of running your business. So what does this mean for you when I talk about going mobile? I think the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is get a mobile-enabled website. I'm not going to ask you, but I'm going to guess that a large percentage of you still have websites that don't look good on a mobile device, and that they weren't designed for a mobile device. Have you ever noticed now when you go to on the website, if you go on the web, all websites sort of look alike now? They sort of scroll down, there's picture scroll, picture scroll. It's because all of those websites have been designed to be looked at first and foremost on a digital device, on a mobile device, on your phone. There is a reason that they look that way, because they've all realized that a smaller and smaller percentage of people are accessing their information on a PC device or a Mac, on a computer. They're looking at it that way. So they are mobile, think digital first when designing your website. The next thing is going to be getting found, and in just a minute I'm going to tell you ways to get found free on the internet. But if people can't find you, what good is it that you have a website or all that information? Accept mobile payments. Here is a really important thing to remember from Rhonda. If people want to pay you, you want to take their money. All right. Let's hear that again. If people want to pay you, you want to take their money. How many of you would agree to that? And yet I bet a whole bunch of you here do not take credit cards, will not accept credit cards. But a big percentage of people want to pay you via credit card. They get miles, they can float it, they get better terms. There was a question in the earlier panel of what kinds of, people want 60-day terms, how do I do it? And I said, I wanted to say credit card. Except take the 3% hit and get the money in your bank account in the next 48 hours. Because you got it. And take it, and if you have to, charge a 3% convenience fee. If people want to pay you, take your money. And so I'm sure there's a couple, I haven't been on the trade show floor there, but I'm sure there's a few mobile devices, a Square reader, an Intuit Go payment, and you're going to go today and get, if you don't already accept credit cards, you're going to go get one of those so that you can accept credit cards if somebody wants to pay you. You will accept their money, all right? If they want to pay you, you will take it. Finally, and not last, run your business in your cloud. So in 2012, in my business in Planning Shop, I declared it, and it really helps, by the way, to make a statement about this is the year of such and such in my business. We do that. This is the year of such and such. And this is the year of digital. So in 2012, it was the year of the cloud. And I put a stake in the ground and I said, we are transferring all of our business processes to cloud-based applications. And it took us a little while. I mean, we probably weren't finished with our server went in 2014. It didn't go before then. But we basically moved all of that. And yes, I'm going to tell you, there's some downsides. You're paying a monthly fee for things that you before just had to buy once and all together. But I'm completely free. I can run payroll from my phone. I can go anywhere. And I have a lot more power to run the applications than without an IT. I don't have an IT person anymore. I don't need to call on them. And I just realized, actually, I was just thinking about it. Every year I send See's Candy to my clients and vendors. And I just realized that poor Dave isn't going to get his See's Candy this year because I haven't needed to use him for a year. And so I might send him one anyway. So, all right. So let's get to some of the other issues for you. We're going to pass this one. Hold on. I'm going to give you homework now, okay? So now take out your pens and papers. I know you have them. And now it comes homework time. And we will have time for questions and answers. I'm going to wrap up some of this. In the next 24 hours, I want you to write down a list of potential niche markets, small markets that you can serve. You could write down 20. But I want you to start writing down and thinking about it because I want you to have a mind shift from thinking that let's say I'm going to say an accountant. I'm an accountant from small business. That's great. That's not enough of a niche anymore. I want you to write down, I'm an accountant for small veterinary practices. I'm an accountant for small technology startups. Whatever they are, write those down. You don't have to prioritize them now. In the next 24 hours, I just want you to brainstorm about them. Over the next week, I want you to think about your goals for the coming year. And then I want you to get some specific. I do not want just, I'm going to double my revenue. If your revenue is $100,000, I want you to put down, You know, I want $200,000, and then we're going to try to figure out what it is. But don't just pull a number out of the hat. Do something realistic. Start listing some goals. And also in the next week, I want you to work a little bit on your pitch. What is your core message? Who are you? What is it that you sell or make? Who do you sell or make it to? And why should they be buying from you? What makes you different? And then finally, also within the next week, I want you to identify skills that you are missing that you need to grow your business. Because that's going to be about how to find your team. Do you not know social media? Do you not know marketing? Do you not know how to run your finances? Do you need a QuickBooks advisor? What are the skills that you are missing? You know, do you have intellectual property concerns and you need somebody to help you with that? What are the things that you're missing? And this is really challenging because entrepreneurs like to do it all. We think we're good at everything. But I want you to start thinking about the skills you need to balance. Okay. Click it a little slow. I'm sorry about that. All right. You're going to want to write down all of these things. So I'm going to take time as I describe these. In the next 48 hours, and I really recommend you do it tonight, but I'm going to give you 48 hours. So before the weekend, you're going to carve out an hour, 1 hour between now and the weekend. And I know you have business and you have kids and you took a whole day, but in 1 hour, and it's not going to take you the whole hour, you are going to get listed on all of these places because this is free advertising. Remember when people are mobile and they're searching and they're looking for whatever it is, dog walker in Palo Alto, you want to come up when somebody puts that in. You know, yogurt shop, Fremont, California. You know, accountant, Raleigh, North Carolina. You want to pop up when somebody looks at that. And these are 4 free places to give it to you. And they're so eager to have you there. Talk to anybody here who's from any of these companies. They'll tell you, let us help you. Because it's more valuable when there's more information. And you can add a lot to there. You can add pictures. You can put the hours of business on it. This just happened yesterday to me. We were looking at something, and we were looking at 2 businesses. I had to do something. We said they don't have their, it was an auto repair shop. And this one didn't have their hours in there. All of them will let you list your hours. And it was really frustrating. We didn't know whether they were open or not. We had to go to their website. For God's sakes. I mean, that's so much work. But, you know, people feel that now. It really felt like, why isn't it just coming up? So all of these, Google My Business, which is google.com/business, Bing Places for Microsoft, bingplaces.com. And yes, people still do use Bing to search. Yahoo Local, local.yahoo.com, and Yelp. Whether you like them or don't like them, make sure you're listed at biz.yelp.com/claiming. Okay, next action. You're going to accept payment. And as I said, you're going to go out there. They're probably all out there. I'm not sure if PayPal's here. But you're going to find ways so that you can accept payment. If people want to pay you, you want to take their money. And by the way, I just had a really big invoice where somebody wanted to pay me with a credit card. And it was a lot of money. And we called them back and said, you know, it's going to be this amount in credit card processing fees. You know, would you mind? I mean, we'll take a check, but if you want to use the credit card, we'll have to tack that on. They added it on, and it was a couple $1,000s. And they were still willing to add it on to pay me. I mean, people, and well, that's okay. They wanted to do it. And so if it's a very large amount, feel free to add that kind of convenience fee. All right. So one of the things that you're going to do in the next 4 hours is you're going to No, they've changed the law. You're allowed to do that now. Not in California? You can't charge a convenience fee in California? I'll look into that. You can if it's what? All right, well, a little later on you, huh? Every bill has to have the same processing fee, whether it's, well, I stand corrected then. So if you're not in California, you can do this. And I just got in trouble. Ooh. Don't tell anybody. Well, that's good to know. And so work with me here, folks. Find a way that maybe instead of charging them a processing fee, you say I have to raise our cost. So that the cost of it can, we'll talk. I know there's a lot of accountants here. Maybe we can figure out how to do that. Oh, God. I've talked about this many times. That's the first time somebody's told me that. Okay. So do it now actions. I'm going to tell you some of the things, the ways to go to the cloud. And I'll leave that up there for a while so you have time to talk to it. And I'll talk to you about it. I know this conference is all about QuickBooks Online, but wow, oh wow, QuickBooks Online is a game changer for small businesses. And whether you're a small business or a lot of your clients are small businesses, QuickBooks Online is now a backbone of a body that you can add all of these different apps to. So if you are a nonprofit and you want to be able to process donations and all, you can have QuickBooks Online and separate apps that work for nonprofits. They have all of these different kinds of apps now that tie onto them. Most of them are, many of them, not most, are on the trade show floor. But we moved, when we moved to the cloud, we had too many customers at the time for QuickBooks Online. So we moved to QuickBooks Enterprise, but remotely hosted. So we're still online and in the cloud and not on our premise. And so that's the first one. And it's not just because it's here, but that way you can access your information anywhere. I've been a QuickBooks payroll customer for like 7 or 8 years. I can't speak highly enough about this. I mean, it's so much cheaper than doing it other ways. These are just, they're only here because these are the ones that we use in my office, right? So, but there's so many. There's competitors to many of these. I won't mention the ones for QuickBooks. But you know, all of these are really good products, and these are the ones that we use. Microsoft 365, we moved our mail to the cloud. You can use Google Mail. There's other kinds of things. We had so many problems with our mail when we did a mail server. I don't think many people are using mail servers. We use Google Docs to share. We use Dropbox. Dropbox is great. For collaboration, you can do it free for a lot, and then for a business, it's still really relatively inexpensive. Here's a free tip for something. It's free for up to 5 or 6 users. Asana, if you've never heard of it, is a to-do list and project management list, so you can share, and you as the business owner can see what the to-do lists are for everybody else in your business. And MailChimp for free newsletters, free email newsletters for up to a whole lot, I mean, for small, and then of course there's also Constant Contact. We use Emma. Okay, and I'm going to open it up now for some questions as well. We do have I don't think we have a microphone, so somebody we have a microphone somewhere? All right. Questions, and also anybody else here from the IRS who needs to tell me what I'm doing wrong. So there was somebody here who had a question about how to grow your business, or no one. I've answered all your questions. I can't. You want to hear about my dog? All right. So I think the point that I'm making. All right. Let's quickly review, and then I'm going to let you get going a little early so you can work that trade show floor. I think the most important thing I can say is that growth, and this is about growth, growth is a choice. Growth is a choice. And like most choices in our life, we have to really commit to that choice to make it work. You know, whether it's losing weight or a fitness program or quitting smoking, we can make that choice, but if we don't commit to it, it's not really going to happen. And so the question, you've all come to this session because you want to grow your business. You've raised your hand and said you do. So the first thing to do is to really say, I intend to grow my business this coming year, and I'm going to turn it in from a dream to a plan. There's something in my own life I want to do. I made that decision, I made that statement about a month ago. I said, it's time for me to take it from a dream to a plan. And that means work. It means setting some specific goals, taking some specific actions. It doesn't mean necessarily hard work. It means consistent work, and it means a mindset. And it's very liberating. I have to tell you, I think we haven't talked a little bit about this. It's very empowering to grow your business. How many of you have an employee or more, one or more employees? Well, I just have to say, I mean, they're a pain in the neck sometimes, right? But at the same time, I truly believe there is no greater contribution other than perhaps raising great kids, but there are few greater contributions you can make to the world than creating a good job for someone. I want all of you who raised your hands, keep raising your hands if you have an employee. I want you to all feel good tonight when you lay your head down on your pillow that you've changed the world for someone. You have. You've changed the world for people who can go home and feel secure, feel like they have a job, feel like they have a boss who talks to them. That, you know, most people aren't entrepreneurs. They want jobs. And you taking the risk that you've taken in your life changes their lives. So that's one of the things about growth, is that growing your business often means growing jobs, which is really a dramatic change for the world around us. And when you grow good jobs, yes. The question was, what is the biggest challenge entrepreneurs have? And there's so many. Gosh, but I think one of the keys that I think is to redefine failure, to learn from failure and setbacks. I think one great challenge is to understand how to keep going and when to not keep going. And that is really hard. That is really hard, when to throw in the towel. I write a weekly column. Probably the most circulated column I ever had was when to throw in the towel. Because that's the hardest decision, is when to do it. But I don't mean throw in the towel on your business. It's when on a project, or when on a client, or on a supplier. We had a supplier we were dealing with, we had to walk away from this week. So one of the things, I speak at a lot of business schools, and when I say to business school students, is the first thing for being success in entrepreneur is to redefine failure. Is to say, what did I learn from this? And I will tell you, that is my knee-jerk reaction when something happens. Like we had this failure with a supplier that we weren't able to come to agreement with. And I said to my tech guy who was managing it, the project manager, I said, what did we learn from this? What are we going to do next time differently? Rather than just saying it was all their fault, what did we learn from it? And so if every situation, whether it's an employee or whatever, you can bring to that question, what did we learn from it? And you become a learning organization where you're always learning. That is a really critical part of growth, where you keep learning. And you keep, you know, change is inevitable. Change is going to happen. And, you know, I can leave you with one sort of thing that I heard from a venture capitalist here in the Valley, and he said, disruption is when other people do it to you, and innovation is when you do it to yourself. Right? Disruption is when other people do it to you, and so innovate yourself in that regard. Yes. The question is borrowing money or seeking investors, and I think a lot depends on what your goals are, how big of a company you're going to be, whether there's a realistic ability to borrow that money, what, you know, in terms of it. I'm going to tell you the best way to raise money for business, though, for startups or for growth, is sales. Right? The best way to raise money. And what do I mean by that? Go out and start making sales of whatever your product or service is before you do. That's why I love Kickstarter. Right? And that didn't answer your question. I'll still come back to it. But Kickstarter is a great way to go out and raise money with sales before you've even launched. So think of how you can kickstart your business even if you don't have a product that would sell on Quickstart. Could you line up clients for your consulting business before you actually launch it? Could you start getting people who have letters of interest in a thing before you have a prototype? So think about how other ways that you can raise money. And I also like money from strategic partners, where they want to see you come to market as well. And I think it really depends. I mean, you know, I have no debt right now in my business, and I think I have too little debt. I'm holding myself back from growth. So I'm not against debt, and I'm not against investors. The question is how you use it and for what purpose. All right, I think we have, there's one last question. So the question is, when she moves from 1099 to hiring people, should she be outsourcing things like payroll and benefits and all? And do you have an accountant? Yeah. So the first thing I do is talk to my accountant. I mean, you know, it's not just because half of you people are accountants. I love accountants. Accountants are basically business advisors. So I think one of the things I would do, sit down with them, because a lot of it has to do with how you actually work. I mean, we do our own payroll with online payroll. I have a very good insurance broker who helps me with, you know, certain kinds of benefits. But my accountant also got us connected with our benefits people for all the kinds of benefits, the 401k and everything like that. He helped us connect with all of it. Right. The accountant tied me into the people who I outsource to. So your accountants are usually, I would bet most of the accountants in this room are here because they want to also find out what resources are good for their small business clients, because they're learning about this stuff. So accountants are, the first place I would go is my accountant to ask for advice. Okay. So on that note, I really want to thank you for coming. I really hope you grow your business, plan to grow your business, commit to growing your business, and go out there and have a really good time on that trade show floor and enjoy Oprah.